Yo, what's up guys? So Destiny update is approaching, it will be in mid-June and it also includes the boss crystal price changes in reboot. The prices will go up, which means bossing mules and bossing in general will be more beneficial, and with the Kana's Kishin removal, Nexon is pushing more towards a bossing mules meta. You don't have much of a choice anymore, you either farm on your main or abuse bossing mules, which is fine I guess. I'd rather boss than farm. So after the crystal changes, a bossing mule up to Lomien, including Lomien, is a weekly income of 1.4 bill from weekly bosses, and without Lomien it's 1 bill and 80 mil each week. I honestly think building a bossing mule that can solo up to Lomien is super easy if your legion is high enough. So yeah, it's really worth it, that's a lot of mesos. By the way, Lomien is Lotus and Demian. Okay, so let's dig in. So the first class that I think would be an amazing bossing mule is Nightwalker. So with the upcoming Destiny update, Nightwalkers are getting a small final damage buff, but the Cygnus revamp is also approaching. It will arrive to Korean Maplestory in like 2 months, so it will be even stronger in the future. But anyway, even right now, it's one of the best bossers in the game. Tons of lines, a crazy burst, and a crazy DPS. And they also have a built-in bind, which is gonna save a node spot. Gotta mention though, Nightwalkers only have one iframe, which is also one of their burst skills. So the survivability is pretty bad, but everything else makes up for it. Alrighty, Dark Knight. Super underrated class. In Destiny update they got huge buffs. I would consider them as overpowered at the moment. They can just ignore the boss mechanics. They have so many survivability skills, iframes and options, and at the same time they hit hard as fuck. Probably one of the best consistent DPSers with a great burst as well, and they are pretty fun and easy to play. Having a good survivability makes things so much easier, especially for bossing mules. I would recommend also getting a cooldown reduction hat. It makes Dark Knight even better. Their low cooldown skills are really fun and a big part of their damage. Okay, Fire Poison Mage. So post Destiny, it's the strongest DPSer in the game. It's a really overpowered bosser. I believe a Fire Poison Mage could solo all the bosses up to Lomien, including Lomien, without too much funding. The Edra Nova bind changes in Destiny also makes Fire Poison even stronger as a solo bosser, because now you can bind more frequently. Overall, it's a really strong class and quite easy to play, nothing tryhard with insane combos or anything. It's gonna be my next bossing mule. Once Destiny arrives, there's gonna be a nice event for new mains or new bossing mules. It will have a lot of free nodes, rings, symbols and more, so you can take advantage of that and build a new bossing mule with almost zero external funding. Demon Slayer is another solid pick for a bossing mule. They have a really high base ID percent on their skills. In Destiny update they got a 5% final damage buff, some quality of life changes, and a big damage buff to their burst skill, Demon's Bane. Demon Slayer burst skills fit really good with the bind cooldowns, and the off burst is great as well. With global Maplestory attack speed, Demon Slayer is pretty overpowered. So just like before, Demon Slayer remains one of the best solo bossers, a really solid pick with a well-rounded bossing kit. Could definitely be an amazing bossing mule. Okay, so dual blades also have a really high base ID built in the skills kit, so it saves a lot of funding. In Destiny update, dual blade is getting a really big buff to their burst skill, Blade Tempest, and more damage to the low cooldown skill, Hunted Edge. And just like Dark Knight, a cooldown reduction hat makes dual blade even better. Building a dual blade from zero to solo Lomien shouldn't be too hard with all the Destiny events. DPS classes are just better as bossing mules because burst classes advantage is mostly in late game when they have a synergy with all of the burst nodes, buffs, Oz rings and such, but that's irrelevant to a bossing mule. So you really gotta mention that DPS classes have an advantage as bossing mules, and also they don't need to wait for the burst cooldowns, they can just hop to the next boss and DPS again. So after explaining why I think DPS classes are better as bossing mules, I think Buccaneer deserves a spot. In Destiny update, Buccaneer got a total buff of around 45% final damage, all buffs included. It's super strong now, one of the best DPSs in the game. It's not burst reliant, so you can just sit on the boss and DPS 24/7, and you don't need to invest on the nodes too much, just on Lord of the Deep, and you're pretty much good until Lomian. Overall, the survivability is great. Buccaneer have the most mobility options in the game, which really contributes to the consistent damage and survivability. And holding fist cooldown is only 90 seconds, so it syncs up with AB Link every time. The kit is super easy, lazy and well-rounded. I honestly think Buccaneer would be a super lazy and overpowered bossing mule. Down Warrior, one of the lowest funding investment with high damage classes, really high DPS. In Destiny update, they got a 10% final damage buff and a new iframe. Down Warrior is amazingly strong, really high damage and DPS, while they also have a great burst. I don't wanna sound too repetitive, but just like the others, a really solid class with a well-rounded kit doesn't require a lot of funding. Definitely a free bossing mule if you abuse events. Before making this video, I consulted with many late game friends and they all said Down Warrior, like all of them just agrees on how overpowered Down Warrior is. So yeah, that's a free bossing mule right here. Okay, now I really gotta mention Jet, Hayato and Shade. Each one of them can be a great bossing mule, and at the same time they have crit damage bonus in Legion, so leveling them to 250 for the max crit damage bonus might be a good idea if you're in late game and you're going for min-maxing. And at the same time you get a bossing mule with an income of 1 bill and 400 mil a week with like 20 minutes of weekly bossing, so it might be worth it if you're min-maxing. And another honorable mentions I wanna talk about are Night Lord, Shadower and Adele. They are node dependent and they really shine and stands out in late game when you have max nodes and you can sync up all of the burst nodes with Oz rings and buffs and party buffs and such. But for early game bossing without too much funding, nodes and Oz rings, I would say there are better alternatives, but they deserve a mention for sure. In late game they are definitely top tier bossing classes. Alrighty guys, that's it for the bossing mules vid. Thanks for watching and see you next time.